tonight, but I just want to remind you again, no cell phones, and I can see everything. So you can shut them off, or if you need to make a call, leave the room. And please don't talk to each other, even in a whisper. So at this point, everyone's blood sugar starts dropping, and we need as much silence to maintain, to give the respect to the proceeding. So if everyone's ready.
We are.
Okay, I'm going to go back on the record. We have a quorum of the board. If the board can just quickly make their appearances.
David Harris.
Sergio Azzolino.
Frank Ruffino.
Bianca Klein. Heather Dane.
Corey Lickman.
Okay, and everyone's heard my admonitions from earlier. We're now on the record in matter of the petition for reinstatement of Jeffrey Nabatmama. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
Okay, and that's going to be before the Board of Chiropractic Examiners, OAH case number 2019-030953, agency case number AC 2003-332. My name is Judge Eileen Cohn. We've made the appearances of our board members, and there's a quorum. So the council, beginning with the representatives of the people, will make their appearances.
Good morning, Your Honor. Representing the people, State of California, Deputy Attorney General Thomas L. Rinaldi.
Okay. First petitioner.
Good morning, Your Honor. Marisol Ocampo appearing on behalf of petitioner Jeffrey Nabatmama, and I'm here present with Mr. Nabatmama.
Did you want to make brief opening statements?
Sure. Final petition of the day concerns license number 24181, which was issued on January 29th of 1996. Accusation number 2003-332 was filed on November 4th of 2003 and alleged numerous violations of chiropractic laws and regulations as a result of the following misconduct. One, from September 2001 through September 2002, petitioner signed 28 certificates of disability relating to applications for disabled persons play cards, which falsely misrepresented that the patients were disabled. Two, petitioner fraudulently billed for treatments that patients did not receive. And three, petitioner's patient notes did not contain sufficient information. The accusation was resolved through a stipulation whereby the petitioner surrendered his chiropractic license effective December 8th of 2004. In 2006, 2013, and 2015, petitioners submitted petitions for reinstatement, all of which were denied by the board. This is his fourth petition for reinstatement.
Okay. Petitioner?
We'll waive opening, Your Honor.
So, Mr. Rinaldi, would you like to present the evidence now?
Yes, the documents in this case consist of petition by Mr. Nabatmama, along with quite a few exhibits ranging from actually the alphanumeric, identified in A through A through O.
Well, I have in front of me BCE 1 through, I think it's 90, 202 is straight. 213, is there another one? And then we just received additional documents.
No, that is accurate. The documents send out to BCE 213. The petition that petitioner submitted actually identifies exhibits alphanumerically within. But if you want, we'll just make it Exhibit 1 collectively through 2013.
Yes, is that accurate on this response, counsel?
Yeah.
Is that accurate to
Yeah.
go by the numbers?
Your Honor, we submitted exhibits by the letters, and that's the way we're prepared to sort of discuss them today. I have an extra set if you'd like it.
Okay, the exhibits, for example, it says Exhibit N, just by random, it says BCE, page 82. Is that also in yours?
Exhibit N is a letter from Farshid David Gohar Sinai. Actually, several character reference letters.
Okay, I have, it's just, let me look at N, so that they are included, though, I think, in this package. Tell me if they're not. So then you can refer to the exhibit number and the page number, and then we can keep the record consistent without having to without the fear of having lost some document between the, what was filed with OAH and here. So I'm looking for, there's a whole bunch of certificates under Exhibit M, and you're pointing to N. So I'm going to find that page just as an example. Okay, Exhibit N, I have page 125, and page 126 is the letter from Farshid David Gohar Sinai. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so do you have also the page number 126?
I don't have the page numbers.
Okay. Is there a way to give her a set which has the page numbers on it? Okay. Are you comfortable proceeding that way, Ms. Marisol?
Yes.
Okay, this is where we have the records pretty clear and not searching for A's and B's and C's. You can do it both ways, but I prefer to mark this admitted as Exhibit 1 with including all of your attachments that are alphanumeric.
And council did submit 2 additional documents right before we began.
And that was a certificate of completion, and is it two certificates of completion?
It's 2, Your Honor.
Okay, so I'm going to put that, to make that easy. On my last page is 213. I'm going to make the certificate of completion of ethics and law, CPR, diagnostic testing, and technique. I'm going to make that the next page, 214. And the page after that, which will be the certificate of completion for distance learning, that will be page 215. And I'm going to attach that, if there's no objection, to the back of which is now Exhibit 1, all the petition documents. Any problem?
No objection.
Okay, so it would be marked and admitted. And then I have Exhibit 2 is just a notice from the board. Yeah, I've marked in each case, Exhibit 2, a petition for reinstatement of revoked license is really the notices sent. This one's dated May 10, 2019 to the board, so that would be Exhibit 2. It's a jurisdictional document. We marked and admitted. Okay. Any other discussion on the documents? Is that complete the record of documents? Okay, so Exhibit 1 and 2 are admitted. You want to
Covers
proceed?
all the documents. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to petitioner to present his case in chief.
Okay. Okay, proceed.
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to question Mr. Nabat Mama. Would you like to affirm it?
I certainly would. Raise your right hand.
Your Honor, is against my religious law to swear. Can I affirm under penalty of perjury?
I have to say that.
Okay.
Something slow. So do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm under penalty of perjury to tell the truth and nothing but the truth.
Okay, thank you. So proceed.
Mr. Nabat Mama, we're here today because you are seeking to reinstate your chiropractor's license with the California Board of Chiropractic Examiners, correct?
Correct.
When did you first obtain your chiropractor's license?
Back in 1996.
And how long did you practice as a chiropractor?
Some around 8 years.
Did you surrender your license to practice approximately 15 years ago?
Correct.
Was that on December 18, 2004?
Correct.
Did the board file disciplinary charges against you which led to the surrender of your license?
Correct.
And as part of the surrender of your license in December 2004, did you admit that there was a factual basis for the charges against you?
Correct.
Did you also agree to pay the board $10,000 of its reasonable cost of investigation leading to the disciplinary charges?
Correct.
Can you describe for us the conduct that you engaged in which gave rise to the board's accusation and the consequent surrender of your license?
I have written 28 disability to people, to the patients for handicap parking, and as well I overcharged 6 patients. And then part of my records and billings were inaccurate and inappropriate and insufficient for the record of a doctor.
So you signed with the 28 certificates of disability relating to applicants for disabled persons?
Correct.
And why was that wrongful conduct?
It's definitely wrongful conduct because I did not perform very true examination on the patients, and pretty much I just gave them the disability, disability paperwork to get handicap parking, without really doing a complete true examination on the patients. And it was very unethical and illegal, what I did.
And you also admitted to committing 6 acts of overbilling, correct?
Correct.
And what did that conduct consist of?
That was also very completely wrongful act from my side. I shouldn't have issued billing for the treatment that I did not render to the patient. Completely wrong. That's fraud and against the law of United States.
What do you believe led you to engage in this conduct?
I was young at the time, and I was not really paying attention on what I am doing. And I was thinking, it's just insurance companies, and it's easy for me to bill people, without performing the treatment on the patient. And I did not realize the gravity of my misconduct, and right now I am much older, and I really know that what I did was completely wrong. I did it was very wrong from my side to do whatever I did. I should have done that.
Do you regret your misconduct?
I deeply regret my misconduct.
Why?
What I did was completely wrong. I hurt many people. I shouldn't have done this. I have completely broke the law. I not only broke the laws of the United States, also broke the laws of my religion and my faith. And what I did was completely against my faith, against the law, and I shouldn't have done that. I hurt many people because of doing that.
What is your faith?
I'm Jewish.
And how has your faith helped you understand the wrongfulness of your conduct?
My faith has many laws that are against cheating and frauding the people. And as I went forward with my faith, I learned that what I did was, completely wrong, because what I did is completely against humanity. I cheated people. I did fraud on the people. What I did was completely wrong. I shouldn't have done that. I stole money from people, and it is completely against my religion law to steal people, steal money from people or to cheat people. It's completely wrong what I did.
And were you practicing your faith during the time that this misconduct occurred?
I was, but then I was not really that religious at the time. And slowly, afterward, I became more religious, and pretty much right now I am completely religious, and I really apologize for what I did.
What do you mean by that, by you saying that you're completely religious, and how has that changed the person that you are from 15 years ago to today?
At the time, I was not that religious, and so then I was not really abiding by my religious law. I was pretty much doing whatever I liked to do, and I was not thinking about my religious law or the laws of the land. As I became more religious, I learned, I learned more laws of my religious, and I find out what is correct thing to do and what is wrong thing to do. My religious is completely against what I did. Completely, I'm very much remorseful for what I did. Very deeply remorseful for what I did.
Do you believe that becoming stronger in your faith has made your moral compass stronger?
Yes, it did.
What have you been doing with your life, with your profession? What have you been doing for a living since you lost your chiropractic license?
I have got a real estate salesman license, and afterward I got real estate broker license. I did receive also insurance license for fire and casualty insurance license. I did receive life insurance license. I did receive variable life insurance license, which includes also financial advisory license. I did receive as well appraisal trainee license on real estate, and also notary public license. Ever since then, I did not renew my notary public license and appraisal trainee license. However, I did continue with my real estate broker license and also insurance licenses.
So presently you hold a real estate broker's license?
Correct.
And when was that first issued?
It was, I think, shortly after I surrendered my license to the board. I think it was back in 94 or 95.
Well, you surrendered your license in 2004. Does that
So it was
refresh
like
your
a
recollection?
2004, 2005.
And have you been engaged in the activity of real estate since you obtained the real estate broker's license?
Correct.
So for the past 15 years, what type of real estate activity have you been performing?
I was doing real estate sales, I was doing real estate rentals, I was doing property management, and anything that pretty much related to real estate broker's license.
And in those past 15 years where you've had this real estate broker's license, has the California Department of Real Estate ever filed an accusation against your broker's license?
No,
Has your broker's license or any other license you've held since you lost your chiropractor's license ever been disciplined in any way?
no.
Now turning to Exhibit 1, page 75, actually page 76. Is this a printout from the Bureau of Real Estate's website showing that there's no disciplinary action against your license?
Correct.
And the next page, page 77, is that a copy of your trainee real estate appraiser license?
Correct.
And this license is expired, correct?
Correct.
And the following page, 79, is this a printout of your insurance licenses?
Correct.
And it shows no disciplinary, no discipline on any of those licenses, correct?
Correct.
And the following page, page 81, is this, can you tell us what this is?
That's a notary public license.
And have you let this one expire?
Yes.
And why is that?
I was very busy with my real estate license that I wasn't able to conduct any businesses with other licenses.
And so practicing in the real estate field, have you had a successful career in that?
Yes, thanks God.
So why do you want your chiropractor's license back?
Ever since I was a child, I wanted to treat patients. I was getting sick very often, and I was going to doctors. And I always loved, to treat patients. And I'm still very, very passionate about treating patients. Many of the patients that I treated during 8 years of the practice that I had got very well. and it gives me the feeling of enjoyment. And I really, really want to go back to chiropractic to treat patients and help the patients to get better and get well.
Since you initially surrendered your license 15 years ago in 2004, you've previously petitioned for reinstatement of the license, haven't you?
Correct,
However, the board has denied your previous petitions, correct?
correct.
And how many times aside from today's petition have you applied for reinstatement and had it denied?
3 times.
And the latest denial was on March 16, 2016?
Correct.
Do you have an understanding as to why the board has on 3 prior occasions denied you the reinstatement of your license?
Yes.
And what is your understanding?
On the previous petitions for reinstatement, I was not as remorseful as I am right now. I am very, very deeply remorseful for what I have done. Back on the first petition, I was ashamed of what I did, and pretty much I denied what I did. But on the but as the time passed, I became more remorseful and more remorseful for what I did, and I really, really apologize for what I did. What I did has no excuse. I'm deeply, deeply apologizing for what I did. I hope that member of the board forgive me, and also the public forgive me for what I did. What I did was completely wrong.
You said that with the first petition, you were denying your conduct?
Correct.
And what has happened over the years that has made you admit the misconduct and lead to your rehabilitation? Have you had conversations with anybody?
I had many conversations with many counselors, with many rabbis, with many psychologists, and many friends, many people. Mostly, I was in communication with many rabbis that made me they made me realize what I did is completely wrong, and I should have not done that at all.
Have you formed close relationships with rabbis through your synagogue?
Yes,
And are these the rabbis you're talking about when you say you've had many conversations with rabbis?
correct,
And are these ongoing conversations over time?
correct. And as of today, I'm still in a communication with many rabbis as well.
What kind of relationship do you have with these rabbis?
I attend the prayers with them every day, at least twice a day. I attend a prayer with them. I do attend many classes with them. Every day I attend a class. Every week I attend additional classes and pretty much Jewish law and ethical classes with them.
And have you obtained letters from different rabbis through your synagogue who support your licensure? Are you obtaining your license back?
Correct.
And have those been submitted as part of your petition?
Correct.
And for example, if we turn to page 151 of Exhibit 1, which is a letter from a Rabbi Menashe Amiri, can you tell us who that is?
Rabbi Menashe Amiri is a rabbi that is actually lives in Israel. Every once in a while, he comes to United States to collect donation for his school and needy people over there in Israel.
And what is your involvement with Rabbi Amiri when he comes to the United States?
I usually volunteer sometime to drive him around to different people so he can actually collect some donation for his school. And I try to help him as much as I can, both with donation, monetary donation, and also with time to help him to be able to collect.
And you've been volunteering your time to do this over how many years?
It has been many years. I don't remember exactly when I first started to know him, but it has been many years.
And do you get paid for any of that time?
No.
We have another letter on page 147 from a rabbi, can you pronounce that?
Yitzhak Mahtov.
Yitzhak Matov. Can you tell us who that is?
Rabbi Yitzhak Mahtov is assistant rabbi of one of the main synagogues that I used to pray at for about 16 years. And I still go to that synagogue, not for prayer. Actually, I go to that synagogue every day, almost for a class that they have, which is conducted by the main rabbi. He has advised me several times, about, my misconduct, and he made me understand that what I did was completely wrong and I should not do it again. I apologize for what I did.
He discusses your involvement with the Or Hamet Institute. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I was in Or Hamet Institute. I was praying over there every day for about 15 to 16 years. And as I said, I still going to the classes over there almost every day. The rabbis in that synagogue, both Rabbi Mahtov and also a main rabbi, which is Rabbi Hachamzadeh, know me very well, and they were guiding me through life, guiding me through my conduct. They were telling me what to do. They were teaching me the values of the life. They were teaching me the ethics in life. They were supporting me, to guide me through the correct path in life.
And turning to page 135 of this exhibit, we have another character reference letter from a Rabbi Eliyahu Netaneli. Can you tell us who that is?
He's a rabbi that during past few years actually pray in his synagogue, and I know him for a long time. He's one of the biggest rabbi, as a matter of fact, in the world. Many rabbis know him. He was actually the teacher of many rabbis in Israel and also in United States. He has taught me lots of values, and I pray with him almost every day. As a matter of fact, this morning I was praying with him as well before I come to over here.
So he writes in his letter about you filming his lectures and posting them on the internet and other medias. Is that volunteer work that you do?
Yeah, that's a volunteer work. Every day he has a lecture after the prayer, which I film, and pretty much I work with a couple of my other friends that helped me to put this on the website. Thousands and thousands of people are watching his lectures. He's lecturing both in Persian and also in Hebrew. And so then, we try to put his lectures on the website every day, and so then thousands and thousands of people can watch it.
Is this something you do on a volunteer basis?
Correct.
I mean, how much of a time commitment is it?
Maybe about 15-20 minutes a day,
And is
sometimes more.
Is that on an ongoing basis, a daily basis?
On daily basis, yes.
Judge, can you make clear that all the statements from non-testifying witnesses are administrative hearsay?
And that's your objection, so do you want to stipulate to administrative hearsay?
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to stipulate to all these letters being administrative hearsay.
Oh, okay, so every letter in that exhibit one will be deemed administrative hearsay.
You also mentioned that you've sought counseling over the years aside from speaking with rabbis, correct?
Correct.
Who have you treated with over the years?
I've treated with Dr. Pakdaman and also Rabbi and Dr. Amiri. He's a psychologist and also a rabbi, and also a few other psychologists.
And what did you learn from treating with Dr. Pakdaman?
Dr. Pakdaman taught me that what I did was completely wrong, but he helped me to get over my depression and shame that I had because what I did was completely wrong, and I was sadly depressed because of this. He taught me to come out of the depression and then correct myself and be sorry about what I did and then don't repeat what I did again.
How long did you counsel with Dr. Pagdaman?
About a year.
And when was that?
It has been many years ago. I don't remember actually exactly.
And did Dr. Pagdaman provide you with a letter for your petition?
Correct.
And is that letter, the letter identified as Bates stamp number 52?
Correct.
And Dr. Pagdaman recommends in his letter, or opines in his letter, that you've learned new skills and insight that will be beneficial in the continuation of your profession as a chiropractor if your license is reinstated, correct?
Correct.
Have you also more recently been evaluated by a psychologist by the name of Dr. Judy Ho?
Correct.
Did she perform a psychological evaluation of you?
Correct.
And how often or how long did you see her as part of this psychological evaluation?
I saw her about 2 or 3 visits.
And did she provide you with a written report for your petition as part of her psychological evaluation?
Correct.
And is that written report identified as Bates stamp numbers 39 through 48 of Exhibit 1?
Correct.
And in page 47 of her opinion of a written report, Dr. Ho opines that you appear to have taken seriously the consequences of your past grave judgment errors, correct?
Correct.
And that her evaluation do not suggest an underlying tendency towards deception or ill will, correct?
Correct.
What insight have you gained over the years from treating with therapists, from seeing Dr. Ho, from speaking to all of these different rabbis that you've mentioned here?
I realized the seriousness and gravity of my misconduct. I found out what I did was completely wrong, very, very seriously wrong, and I am completely remorseful for what I did. I apologize for what I did, and I'm not going to repeat that again.
Have you paid all of the costs of the board's investigation and enforcement relating to the disciplinary charges which led to the surrender of your license?
Correct.
And that was approximately $10,000, correct?
Correct.
And when did you finish paying all these costs?
It has been about 4 years ago, before the last petition.
Now, you've talked a little bit about the volunteer work that you do through your synagogue and with these different rabbis. Do you also make monetary charitable donations?
I try to make monetary charitable donation to as many as organizations as I possibly can. I have many organizations in the United States and also in Israel and other countries as well.
And turning to exhibit page number 54 of Exhibit 1, this is says it's a receipt donation. Can you tell us what the donation is for?
This donation is for an organization in Israel. They are building boxes, like very large boxes, and people come and put clothing and food inside that boxes. Then they take the clothing and food from the boxes and distributing among the people who are needy, among orphans, widows, people who don't have money. I pretty much gave them as much as donation as I could for them to build a few different boxes, so then they can collect the donations from other people. in Israel.
And this reflects the donation of approximately $4,718?
Correct.
And the next page is a donation to Or Hamid Institute. Can you tell us what that donation was for?
Or Hamid Institute not only is a synagogue, but also they are also in a school. So my donation is actually helping them to provide teachers for the for the student in a school to teach them religious law and pretty much religious and the rest of the laws.
And so these are the following pages, 55 through 58 are various donations you've made to this agency?
Correct. Besides these exhibits that we have, by the way, also continue giving them donation, and pretty much, ever since throughout the years, I pretty much give each organization a still donation, and as we are going on, still I'm helping them out.
And Exhibit 61 are the various donations over the years that you've made to this Or Hamid Institute, correct?
Correct.
Now, do you also volunteer with a no, strike that. Now, have you also maintained your education over the years since you surrendered your chiropractor's license?
Correct. Every year I was attending the continuing education class as if I was licensed. So I was doing the continuing education class that is required by law for people who are licensed. Besides that, of course, I was taking some extra classes as well, and I was studying on my own also to keep my mind refreshed about chiropractic and everything.
So you've kept up all the units you would have had to take were you licensed, correct?
Correct.
And are those credits reflected in Exhibit 1 Bates stamp numbers 83 through... through 124?
Correct.
And
there was a new exhibit submitted to the board today.
And we also provided an additional exhibit with pages 214 and 215 to the board today, which established what?
It shows that I did continuing education also for this year, 2019.
So on February 24th, 2019, you completed approximately 12 hours?
Well, there was actually 12 hours in the classroom education and 12 hours distance learning, so 24 hours.
And as part of those recent courses that you took, that included 4 hours of ethics and law, correct?
Correct.
And 2 hours of ethics, healthcare in America?
Correct.
Okay, Council, I don't want to interrupt your flow, but we are approaching 12, and I wanted to get an estimate. We can probably push it to 12:15. We think that everything will be done, because most of the stuff, everything's been admitted. So it's good to have a guide as to where everything is, but we're assuming that the credits that are listed, that it's a certificate that he's taken them, so we don't need any foundation for it really. So that's all I have to say. So
Yes, Your Honor, we should easily.
I don't want to I don't want to cut you off, but I think I want to make sure that we know that we have it in evidence, and then you can move on to other things.
Board members have reviewed all of this also.
I understand, we should be finished soon.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Nabat Mama, do you consider yourself to be a changed man today than you were 15 years ago?
Of course.
How so?
15 years ago, I didn't know what I'm doing. I did many wrong things. Today, I'm completely remorseful. I realize the seriousness of my misconduct, and I'm deeply remorseful for what I did, and I apologize for whatever I did.
What has changed since then, since the surrender of your license, that can assure the board that you won't commit acts like this again in the future?
I know that what I did was completely, seriously, very wrong, and I'm very deeply remorseful. I know that I'm not going to repeat this again. I realize the gravity of my misconduct, and I know what I did is very, very wrong, and I'm not going to repeat it.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Mr. Rinaldi, any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Navamama, consistent with your testimony earlier today, in your first petition hearing, you denied any fraudulent activity occurred in your practice. You completely did an about-face in future petitions. So my question to you is, how could the board be sure that your recent characterization of the underlying misconduct is genuine and not as simply motivated by a desire to reinstate?
Back then I was young, and as I said, I was I was ashamed of what I did, so that's why I denied it, and I couldn't really admit to what I did because I was very ashamed. But over the past many years, it has been many years past ever since then. I grow up in my faith. I learned more about life. I am more experienced now. I am much older right now. Back when I became a chiropractor, I was 21 years old. Right now I'm 46 years old. I do understand the gravity and seriousness of my misconduct. I am very much remorseful for what I did, and I am 100% sure that I'm not going to repeat what I did, because I know it's completely wrong. It was a mistake. It was a big mistake.
Okay. In the first decision denying your petition, it was found that with respect to some of the patients that you defrauded, you compounded your misdeeds by having sued them in small claims court and won judgments against them. Have you taken any steps to rectify your misconduct with respect to those patients?
Yes, I did apologize to those patients. I have not collected any money from them. And at the time I was licensed, I did give them the treatment that I charged them for, and I didn't give them.
Did you remove the judgments?
I removed the judgments, yes.
And as far as paying off your cost bill with the board, why did it take you 14 years to do so?
I didn't have financial resources to pay the board, but then as soon as I got the financial resources, I paid the board in full. Because I knew that the board spent the loss of time, wasted the loss of time, unfortunately, on my misconduct, and took out some costs because of my misconduct. So I paid them. I paid in full because I knew that I should do that for sure.
Was it motivated by a desire to have your petition granted?
I was motivated mostly because I knew what I did was wrong, and I had to pay for my misconduct. Even if I was not getting my license back, I still wanted to pay the board. That's what I did it, because actually on the original petition, the board was requesting that I pay the board after I received my license back. But after I talked with my rabbis and I talked with my consuls and other people, I realized that it doesn't make any difference whether I get my license back or not. I have wasted board's time, I have wasted board resources, and I owe the board the $10,000 no matter what. So that's what I paid them. I paid them in full, even before I get my license.
Okay. You talked about a bunch of professional licenses that you've obtained. Real estate salesperson license, a real estate broker's license, an insurance broker license. You obtained those all after your revocation?
Yes.
When did you get your real estate salesperson license? Was it 2005?
I believe so, yes.
How were you able to get that license in light of having a professional license revoked shortly there before?
Every licenses that I got, they took fingerprint from me, and they didn't find any criminal record against me. So then they issued the license to me right away.
Did they ask you if you'd had any professional licenses revoked in the past?
Yes,
And what was your response?
I believe that I responded yes.
And would that be true of your broker's license as well?
Correct.
Okay. I have a document I'd like to show the petitioner, if I may.
Okay, let's share it with the council.
Approach the board member.
Yeah, people approach me, I'll take it. Okay. This is for impeachment. You want this admitted or just as
I'd like to admit it.
First mark this as exhibit 3. Okay. And then I'll see if it's, after it's admitted, I'll give it to you.
Let me know when I can proceed.
You can proceed.
Mr. Wonderful, turning to page 2, can you tell me, is that your signature at the bottom page?
Correct.
Turning your attention to question number 24A, can you read it into the record, please?
Have you ever had a denied, suspended, restricted, or revoked
Speak up,
business?
please.
Have you ever had a denied, suspended, restricted, or revoked business or professional license, including real estate in California or any other state?
What was your response?
My response was no.
And how can you reconcile this response with the question that I asked you earlier as to whether or not you disclosed your previous discipline?
Right. But I was thinking that I did answer yes to this question, but then in here, this application has been in about 15 years ago that I filled out this application, so I don't really recall exactly what I did answer, but I was thinking that I did answer yes, but apparently not.
So your response wasn't that you didn't recall, your response was that you did disclose it.
My response was I believe that I didn't do I disclosed it. That's what my response was.
All right. What about your broker's license? Did you disclose the previous discipline with respect to that application?
Again, I believe that I answered yes and I disclosed it, but then it has been a long time ago, so I don't really recall what happened
Turn
exactly.
your attention to page 5 of this document.
Mr. Rinaldi, can you speak up also, please?
You turn your attention to page number 5 and read question number 19A.
You're just counting the pages, because I don't have page numbers on here. Oh, it's up in the top, right?
Have you ever had denied or suspended, restricted, or revoked business or professional license, including real estate in California or in other states? And I answered no.
Again,
Right. It has been a long.
inconsistent with the question that I asked you earlier, correct?
Yes, as I'm saying that I believe that I answered yes to these questions, but again, it has been a long time ago, so apparently as I'm reading it, it has been about 15 years ago that I filled out this application, so I don't really recall. So as I'm reading it, I'm wrong. I did answer no.
Would you agree then that your real estate licenses were fraudulently obtained?
Yes.
What about your broker's or your insurance license? Do you remember the responses that you provided with respect to those applications?
No, I don't recall because it has been 15 years ago.
You don't know one way or the other?
No.
You know, I'd like to admit those documents into the record.
And these are your signatures on these documents that I've marked as Exhibit 3. I'm asking your client.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so what I marked as Exhibit 3 is a collection of license applications with signatures, and I believe is there anything else in here other than the license applications? Okay, we're going to, those are marked as 3 and admitted. I'm going to pass it to the board members. Yeah, look at the match. We have 1, okay. No other questions? Okay, any cross from that? Redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, I'm going to turn this over to the board now. Beginning, I think that, right, we'll do left this time. Okay. Just identify who you are first if you have questions. Anything on the left?
No, I do not.
Okay. Moving along, okay.
Heather Dean, I don't have any questions.
Dion McLean. I have just a couple of questions, plus maybe clarification. In your statement, in your paperwork preparation, and I'm looking at BCE 000005, the bottom paragraph, and it's asking about the statement about your mistakes, and you've sought atonement for them and made significant steps to ensure that this former misconduct will never happen again. Can you name just one step, specific step that you have done to prove that this will never happen again?
I've been in communication with many rabbis and counselors, and I've been attending many classes, many ethic classes, many ethic classes and religious classes. So then in here I learned my lesson. Very in the hard way, and I've been learning my lessons for many years. I've been in communication with rabbis for many years.
So if given the opportunity to have your license again, and besides speaking with your rabbis, which is very important, while you're in your practice, if you're given another opportunity, what would you do in your practice that would ensure and enable us and ensure that there are specific steps that you would take in the practice?
I make sure that I abide by all the laws and all the ethic laws and all the the laws of the United States and California, and also I abide by my religious laws, which are completely pro-humanity, and I make sure that I do not break any law.
I have
And
nothing further.
Frank Ruffino, no questions.
Sergio Azalino, no questions.
Okay.
David Paris.
Sorry.
I have a question. We have a salesperson's license application, we have a broker license application, and we have a corporation's license application. Were any of those renewed beyond the initial period?
yes, as a matter of fact, that is still active, and I still have the broker license and also the cooperation license.
And upon renewal, are you asked the same question?
I don't
Having the license?
I don't recall.
How often do you renew those licenses?
Real estate broker license get renewed every 4 years. Real insurance license get renewed every 2 years.
No, can I speak to that, or should I not?
Well, if it's not evidence, unless it's a fact that can be judicially noticed, then you can't speak to it.
I have one further question. Have you done any continuing education in the last, since January 2018?
Yes, the new evidence that has been submitted to the board today shows that I did a continuing education in
These here, okay.
2019.
So just
As a,
those two.
as a matter of fact, Dr. Porteus, who was teacher in this unit, is present in the audience today. He can testify to that fact.
Thank you. No further.
Any follow-up questions from the board's questions?
Yes, Mr. Nabat Mama, you were asked what you would do should you be given your license back in terms of making sure you're following the regulations and not breaking any laws. Would you be willing to have somebody, another chiropractor, supervise you in your practice?
Yes, I would.
And where you would basically just be limited to treating patients and not handling any of the billing or anything like that?
I would.
No further questions.
Nothing further, Joe.
Do you want to closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
As Mr. Nabat Mama has testified today, he deeply regrets and is remorseful for his misconduct that led to the loss of his license in 2004. However, his wrongful conduct occurred over 15 years ago, and throughout the years that have followed, Mr. Nabat Mama has worked hard to rehabilitate himself, including by strengthening his faith, forming close relationships with his rabbis, seeking and obtaining counseling to gain insight into his behavior and ensure he never engages in this type of dishonest conduct again. He regularly volunteers his time to help others in his community and makes regular, substantial donations over many years to charitable organizations helping people in need. Mr. Nabat Mama has also sought and gained licensure in his other professions, and where he has practiced for many years without any discipline against any license. Mr. Nabat Mama has thus spent the last 15 years living a responsible and honorable life. Yet, as he testified today, despite having established a second career as a real estate broker, Mr. Nabat Mama's true passion and calling in life is treating patients as a chiropractor. He has maintained and updated his knowledge, skill, and learning in the chiropractic field by taking all the necessary continuing education courses he would have been required to take had he still been practicing during this time period, in the event the board decides to reinstate his license. This evidence of Mr. Nabat Mama's complete rehabilitation is corroborated by many individuals, as he has submitted approximately 30 character reference letters written on his behalf from people who have personally observed him flourish in the years subsequent to his misconduct, including letters by various rabbis who all uniformly describe Mr. Nabat Mama as an honorable person who truly realizes the gravity of his misconduct and has learned from it, who deeply cares about others and is selfless with his time in helping others. Mr. Nabat Mama therefore respectfully requests that this board reinstate his license.
Mr. Nolly,
People will submit.
submit. Ready to submit?
Yes, and thank you.
Okay, so the matter is submitted and the record is closed. Thank you for your participation.
The board is now going to be going into closed session, so we're going to ask all people in the audience to exit the room. We will be returning after a 1-hour lunch break, and welcome everybody to come back in at that time.
So everyone will be excused except your neighbor council.
Ready? Go ahead. We're live.
Okay. You all set? Welcome, everybody. We're coming back on the record here after lunch. The board's deliberated the closed session, deliberated the petitioners. And so we're going to be moving forward to item number 6 on the agenda, the chair's report. Since our last meeting, we've had a new attorney appointed to us, Michael Knotes, who is here with us. We look forward to working with him. We want to thank Ken Swenson, who is here with us for all of his years of service and dedication, and he's been very helpful to us. Additionally, since our last meeting, Mr. Pulio and myself have met with the medical board to discuss Moscone-Knox regulation dealing with corporate licensure or corporate oversight of chiropractors, hiring medical physicians and other ancillary medical providers, and we've had some clarity on that it is within their understanding that chiropractors can do so. Beyond that, we've had several meetings with school presidents and administrators regarding educational standards and the possibility of just making things more contemporary throughout our curriculum, given the confines of the Chiropractic Act. That's an ongoing discussion that continues to this day, and we look at having a formal meeting to discuss this further in the next month or two. Additionally, Dr. McLean attended FCLB just several weeks ago, so I'm going to turn this over to her so she could give us an update on what she learned at FCLB.
Thank
Dr. McLean.
Thank you very much, Dr. Azzolino. And since I wasn't here last time, I also thank you and the rest of my esteemed colleagues for the congratulations for my reappointment. Thank the governor of this great state for that reappointment as well. Ready to handle the business of this board. The FCLB meeting was earlier this month, and it was very enlightening. We discussed changes in the MBCE that MBCE is making. Some of the changes are that they now have a chat, online chat, that you can talk back and forth and get info there. They recently shortened part 1 and 2 from 90 questions to 50 questions based on studies that they participated in over the last couple of years, identifying the reliability of classifications of examinees being able to reach the level of mastery of subject matters versus non-mastery. And they found that the correlation with the number of tests the number of questions didn't change significantly, so that warranted them making those changes in the testing situation. As of 5/20 of 2018, also Part 3 and Part 4 were moved to the Irt Scoring Method, which is a sophisticated mathematical scoring process. Additionally, Part 4, diagnostic imaging, was revised to 20 stations, and the NBCE has developed an institution review board committee to ensure adhering to federal regulations. And they have also completed studies on understanding testing, successful performance, modernizing testing procedures, best practices, and many other categories. One of the studies that they spoke about a lot, that was very popular, was the correlation between GPA and how well one does on testing. While there was a positive correlation, there was no causation. There are several international organizations that discuss the importance of regulators and educators working very closely together, both nationally and internationally, and to provide a more consistency within the education process, because we're seeing a lot more of people transitioning from one country to another, even from the States to overseas. There was a lot of discussion on regenerative medicine and the limits therein. Of course, there was discussion on SB 888 regarding opioid prescriptions, and that's basically something that I'm sure that everybody's a little familiar with, and that will be discussed a little more later in governmental affairs. There was discussion on opioids, hemp, CBD. There's also a legal, a group of attorneys who have a subcommittee called the CBLAC, which is the Cairo Board of Legal Action Committee, who meet regularly, whom Robert and I gave that information over to our legal counsel so that they can start communicating as well with and meeting on those teleconferences so that we can find out and participate in what's going on nationally, as well as get some insight and input there. All organizational stakeholders were in attendance and also provided information and reports. That's everyone from ACA, ICA, CCE, the Cairo Congress. They all gave national updates and addressed the delegates. Our director for the region is Karen Campion, who was elected at that meeting, and she specifically has pledged to communicate with us or with me or whomever the delegate may be regularly so that we can stay in the loop even if we continue to have some challenges with traveling out of state. She's dedicated to making sure that we are still kept in the loop of the information. She highly encouraged that we attend the regional meetings, which are much smaller and much more intimate, but a lot of work is accomplished in those meetings as well. It was very, very informative and very enlightening. One of the things that I also discussed as a part of this process is, I've been on the board a number of years, and that was my first meeting there, and I wished I had gone much sooner than that. I would encourage the board members to all attend a meeting, as well as I would like to see for us to have in place something that we make sure that a senior board member also takes a newer board member to try to get them acclimated into that process and that system and understanding, so that as we transition off the board, there's more consistency in our communication and our participation and what's going on. I think that would be real important for us in the future.
Thank you. I'd like to also mention Dr. Dane attended as an alternate delegate. Dr. Dane, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
I do. I just have a few notes from the beginning of day one. And one thing that I wanted to bring up to the board, which I think that we're all aware of, but we had a speaker specifically on millennials and Gen Zen and how they are going to be the consumers of our educational programs and how we can appeal to them. So that's something that as a board we need to keep in mind, that the demographic is changing, and there's some information on that. I don't think this is new information. We all know that it's kind of the YouTube society and that kind of thing. So I just wanted to just let you guys know.
Do you have anything on that conversation or on that lecture that can be disseminated among the board members?
Sure.
That would be helpful.
Yep.
Anything further?
Nope.
Thank you, ladies.
Dr. McLean did a great job about representing all the rest of the information.
The dissemination of the document should be directed through the executive office.
Yeah, I will.
Okay, and is Patrick here? So I'd like to now welcome the Department of Consumer Affairs Assistant Deputy Director for the Board of Bureau Relations, Patrick Lay. Patrick.
Good afternoon. Chair Azzolino, Vice Chair McLean, Executive Officer Puleo, members of the board. It is good to see you all in beautiful Whittier. As a point of personal privilege, I actually spent a few of my formative years in the San Gabriel Valley, just a thrown stone away from here. So it's always good to be back in the old stomping ground, especially when you know you're only a few minutes away from some of the best Vietnamese restaurants in the world. So again, thank you so much for allowing an opportunity for the Department of Consumer Affairs to provide an update to your board. For the purposes of the minutes and for the record, my name is Patrick Lay. I'm the Assistant Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Services at the Department of Consumer Affairs. And since I know we have a few students with us in the room, I figured I'd also do an intro for the department. We are the umbrella sister department for many of the licensing boards in California. So we work very closely with boards such as the Board of Registered Nursing, the Dental Board, the Board of Optometry, the Bureau of Cannabis Control, and of course the Board of Chiropractic Examiners. Part of this is to give you an update on recent DCA activities, and my first one is regarding the DCA director. And as many of you know, Mr. Dean Grafilo recently left his post as the director of the Department of Consumer Affairs on April 19th. We are incredibly grateful for his service, for his leadership, and we wish him the absolute best as he starts a new chapter in his career in the private sector. We look forward to be working with the governor's office as we work towards a smooth transition and as we prepare for new leadership at the department. And in the meantime, we truly appreciate your patience as we undergo this time of transition. My next update is regarding the executive officer salary study. And as you recall, the department has retained KH Consulting to conduct an executive officer salary study. The goal of the study was to do an in-depth analysis of the operational complexities of board operations in the past few years. The goal was to also examine some of the processes and the mechanisms behind accepting or denying a salary request increase, but also do a benchmark comparison of salaries in other states and look at comparable programs outside of California and look at EO salaries there. We are happy to report that the salary study is completed, and we are undergoing the final stages of review and approval, and we hope to do a release in the coming weeks. We're looking forward to be sharing the results with you and our findings, and we truly appreciate your patience as we wrap up this, what we know is an important project for the department. My next update is regarding the Substance Abuse Coordination Committee. And so I know you're very familiar with the committee, but for the members of the audience, the committee is a committee created by law. It is made up of all the executive officers of the healthcare boards at DCA, and the goal of the committee is to design and examine the department's guidance and protocols behind how boards should handle substance abusing licensees, or licensees who have an alcohol or drug problem. As recall, last year, the legislature tasked the department with examining the standards determining drug testing for our licensees in a diversion or in probation due to substance abuse. But during these meetings, the committee also determined to see if there are other standards that need to be looked at. And as you know, there are 15 other standards beyond drug testing, such as the mandatory participation in group meetings, data collection, and drug testing. So to that end, the department has deployed a survey 2 weeks ago. It went to executive officers, stakeholders who participated in the meetings, and the goal is to identify common threads where there are possible agreement about what else should be modified when it comes to the Substance Abuse Coordination Committee. So again, we'll be collecting the answers to this survey and determine a path forward in terms of future changes to the uniform standards. My next update is regarding the Technology Advisory Group. It is an exciting new project spearheaded by Jason Piccioni, our Deputy Director for the Office of Information Services, and this group aims to provide guidance on how the department can use technology, both innovative technology and emergent technology, to improve the way we do business at the department. So some of the concepts that were explored, for example, are how we can use artificial intelligence or machine learning, which is extensively used in the private sector, to provide direct-to-consumer customer service, or how we can better integrate some of the various information technology platforms across all of the department in order to provide a smoother user experience, or how we can overhaul and improve our security solutions to make sure that we continuously secure personal, sensitive consumer information in the world where digital threats are constantly evolving. So this effort just kicked off in March, and we're looking forward to see what this group can come up with in the months and the years to come. And my last update is one that I'm really excited about. It's regarding the DCA Open Data Portal. DCA just launched a one-stop shop for all licensing and enforcement data across all 37 DCA board bureaus and commission. So users are able to go on the websites. On the licensing side, they can see a current amount of licensees, pending applications, renewals. On the enforcement side, they can see data such as average investigation times. And all of this data is sortable. You can download it in Excel, PowerPoint, PDF, and it's part of a broader effort to make data more transparent and available for the public. And as a self-proclaimed data nerd, I'm actually really excited about this. So if you have a bit of time, whether you're a board member or a member of the audience, highly encourage you to check out our data portal. It is at www.dca.ca.gov. Up on the page, you'll see a tab that says Data. Click on it, and you'll see where the magic happens. So that concludes my update, fairly short for today. Again, thank you so much for welcoming the department on the stage, literally. And if I can take any questions from the board, happy to take them.
How soon do you think, thank you for that, by the way, how soon do you think we're going to see some meaningful implementation of this technology in regards to license fees, collections, and whatnot?
Obviously can't speak for Jason, but I think my understanding is really the kickoff is to really see from the board perspective what is the most common need and where can technology fill these gaps. And some of the first meeting was kind of looking at technology that currently exists and how it's used. And so, for example, we had a presentation on artificial intelligence and how when you go on a customer service, you get the chat, the pop-up chat. Many times, if you can't talk to a person, it's an artificial intelligence that will fill in the gap. And it will constantly learn to kind of see what do users actually need and how can they get that information quicker that a human being would otherwise not be able to provide. So it's asking those kind of questions like, can we use this technology here at the department to make sure that we can provide better support, both the boards, for consumers, for the members of the public. So all of that to say, unsure about the timeline. It all depends on how our partners at the board can tell us what they need, and then moving forward from there.
How about pro rata amounts? How do you think that's going to play into it?
Excellent question. I think technology has a proven track record of creating cost savings, and so we understand pro rata is an important issue for our board, and so wherever we could make that happen, we would.
And I can provide, regarding technology specific to Alley Board, I can provide, when I get to my report, a little information on that.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Patrick.
Thank you for having me.
And forgive me, students, for not welcoming all of you, and thank you for having us. Dr. Egan, we're excited to be here. We bring the meetings to the schools for one reason and one reason only, and that is to engage all of you. All of us have been there in those seats, and all of us, I think, share the same sentiment that you don't really know what the board does and why it does what it does until you're actually engaged on this level. Certainly this morning gives you one aspect of, unfortunately, what we have to deal with, and hopefully that's could be a very learning experience and something that you keep in the back of your mind. But there's a lot of administrative things that happen on a daily basis, just overseeing the licensure that all of you hope to have in the schools and whatnot. So we encourage you all, if you have any questions, you could step forward. There will be a time at the end of the meeting for public comment, and certainly you could always direct your questions towards our executive officer, Robert Puleo, or any of the members of the board. We're here to help you, okay? And hopefully all of you will be sitting here very shortly. So on that, we're going to move on to the next matter, which is approval of the February 15th board minutes.
So moved.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Any discussion? Public comment? Call for the vote, please, Mr. Rufino.
Dr. Azzolino?
Yes.
Dr. McLean?
Abstain.
Frank Rufino, yes. Dr. Dan?
Yes.
Dr. Lickman?
Yes.
Dr. Paris?
Yes.
Thank you. And ratification of approved license applications.
Make a motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Public comment? Call for the vote, please.
Dr. Azzolino?
Yes.
Dr. McLean?
Yes.
Frank Rufino, yes. Dr. Dan?
Yes.
Dr. Lickman?
Yes.
Dr. Paris?
Yes.
Excellent. And ratification of denied license applications, which did not request a hearing, and we do not have any. So next item is ratification of approved continuing education providers.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Public comment? Let's call for the vote.
Dr. Azzolino?
Yes.
Dr. McLean?
Yes.
Frank Rufino, yes. Dr. Dan?
Yes.
Dr. Lickman?
Yes.
Dr. Paris?
Yes.
Okay, next is going to be our executive officer's report. Mr. Puleo.
Good afternoon. Excuse me. I'll be covering various administrative items, starting with administration and staff positions. We currently have 3 vacant positions with the board. There's in our administrative unit, there's currently a management services technician, which is a clerical position that's vacant. And right now, our budget is tight for, I'll explain that a little later when I get to the fiscal report. But we're leaving that position vacant, as well as an analyst, an entry-level analyst position in the enforcement unit to reduce our expenditures and stay within our budget. We actually, our goal is for the next few years to to revert at least $400,000 each year back to our fund to keep it solvent. As we all know, we recently raised fees because our fund was depleting. We haven't had a chance to replenish it yet, but we have IT projects in the works that are going to be expensive, so we want to set aside money for that. And so we're keeping positions vacant and cutting corners wherever we can to avoid having to increase fees in the near future. And I'm hoping down the line we'll be realizing efficiencies through some of these IT projects, and we won't need to raise. We won't need to raise fees for the foreseeable future, but we never know what's going to hit us, so we have to be prepared, and I try to keep a healthy reserve in our fund. So the third position we have vacant is a full journey level analyst position in the enforcement unit, and we've been actively recruiting for that. And we've interviewed candidates where we're in the final stages of selection, and we should be appointing somebody to that position within this month. So that I'll have an update at the next meeting, hopefully, that of our new appointment to that unit. Regarding our budget, there's a fund condition statement in your packets, and as you can see, I asked the budget office to project out 5 years, and if we were to expend our full budget allotment, we would be insolvent by fiscal year 23-24. Typically, we don't expend our full allotment. We usually come in well under budget, and now in order to ensure that we don't become insolvent, we're actively looking at ways to cut costs so that we can address the expenditures that we have coming with IT and stuff, and not. So this when they do these projections, they're projecting that we're going to expend our full budget, and so that's why it shows this. But if we do realize the savings that we're working towards, then we won't get to that point. We'll be able to stay solvent.
So I just want to draw your attention to a couple of different things in the interest of transparency. So if you look at the governor's budget year 1920, we've asked our budget analysts to put in the amount that we're going to revert for the business modernization or the new IT project. So if you see that line item under expenditures for $540,000, so in the next upcoming budget year, we're going to revert that. So that money's going to be held to contribute to our IT purchase. And so that's the only money as far as we've been approved for the next year. But there will be another expenditure in the following budget year for the second half of the IT system purchase. And that's not reflected here because that hasn't been approved yet. So I just wanted to let you guys know that the money has been set aside for the next budget year, and that we will be using that to actually start the purchase or the procurement of a new IT system.
Is that why there's such a sharp decline in the months in reserve?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And then, so again, just to be clear, that next budget year for 2021, there'll be another significant expenditure that's going to go towards the IT project. And then that's what we anticipate as far as that. So on the out years, that we won't be expending any more money based on the IT, and so we should be able to then start building our fund back up.
So despite the appearance, we're in good shape, and we have some big expenditures on the horizon, but we're working to set aside money to offset that. And so I don't anticipate getting even close to having a budget deficit or a fund deficit, but we'll have to monitor it closely, and just want to let board members and licensees and the public know that if we take a little bit longer in certain services, or we're not able to deliver the same services as we were. It's because we're dealing with budget constraints as well as staffing limitations, and so we're doing everything we can, and hopefully we'll get back to normal within a couple of years and be able to fill those positions. Any questions about the budget?
Yeah. So will the amount for the IT project be equal next
So-
year as it is the same expenditure?
So they've set aside that 540, but so I'll explain this more on the IT update, but we're currently in the process of procuring the new system. So we actually haven't even gone out and asked for bids from a vendor. So we actually don't know how much it's gonna be. This, the OIS has a general range in which they think the price could be, and so they've set aside that money so that when we get the final number, we don't come up short as far as what it's going to be to procure the system in that first year. So it could be 540 and it could be less.
This is kind of a good news and bad news situation, because when we raised fees last year, we weren't able to project the IT costs because we didn't know what they would be or when they would hit.
Right.
The good news is that we're moving ahead of schedule on the IT project, and so they're hitting sooner than we anticipated. So that's the bad news, is that it's, we weren't prepared for it. We didn't have time to replenish our budget, so it's making things a little bit tight. But we are, I know it's been a long haul, but we are getting closer to having IT improvements, and we will discuss some of those in a few minutes.
And in the meantime, does this budget, are we halting on our repayment for the bar loan?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's just hanging out there.
Yeah, and luckily we have flexibility
I know.
because it is intra-departmental loan, and so we have flexibility written into the memorandum of understanding. So we're able to do that, and I know we're fully capable of repaying the loan. It's just going to take us maybe a year or two longer.
So after the IT situation is taken care of, we can go back to that?
Yeah, then we'll go back to that.
Okay.
How much have we repaid thus far?
1.25 million.
Out of 2.5, was it?
Out of 3.
Okay.
So, and that was another thing. All of these things are moving targets, and so we were being aggressive in the repayment of that loan, not knowing that then we would be hit with other expenses that so otherwise we might have paid a little less so that we would have a little more in the fund. But it's all coming out in the wash. So. Just one second. So on to the licensing report, and Dixie Van Allen, the board's licensing continuing education and administration manager, is here, and she's going to give an update on licensing.
Included in your packet are some licensing trends, which we always provide to you. It is showing that there has been a decline in the number of licensees pretty consistently. And in last November, we actually dropped below the 13,000 mark. Now I want to clarify, this is for clear licenses. This doesn't include licenses in forfeiture.
Just to explain, a forfeiture is a term that licenses that are recently expired, and it may be because they forgot to renew on time, or so some of those will be renewing in the near future. Another term that Dixie will be using is cancellation, and that usually that's where it's been 3 years. So
Yes.
It's been 3 years since the license expired, and usually in those cases, very few people who go into cancellation end up reinstating down the line. Sorry.
That's okay. So I looked at some of our trends and to see if there was a pattern, and I can't really come up with any significant reason at this point on why our licensing population is dropping, other than the fact that the number of cancellations every year exceed the number of new licenses we get, new licenses we issue every year, and also the number of sorry, the number of people that, oh gosh. The number of people that actually restore their license from canceled has been consistent. However, this last fiscal year, it did drop. It's normally around 35 per year, so that's not a significant number, but this last year it dropped down to 14. So
14
just
that canceled?
No,
14 that restored their canceled license. So that's not a significant number, but year over year, it's been about 35 people per year that do restore. But again, the number of licenses that we issue every month are not going up, and the number of cancellations and retirements and such are increasing, and so it's just a steady decline. I'm going to be providing at the next board meeting this fiscal year's analysis, and hopefully I will have some more trends to actually walk you through kind of the timeline going back about 10 years to see if we can find anything further.
Are there any questionnaires, people canceling their license, whether they're moving out of state, whether they're retiring?
No, I do get a lot of just people sending in letters to me stating that they're retiring. We can't just cancel their license at that point. The natural progression of the cancellation is that it goes into forfeiture, and then 3 years later it's canceled.
Would it be too burdensome to start drafting that?
I mean, I can, but not everybody's required to notify us.
Yeah, we could put like a survey, kind of like an exit interview, a survey that we send out when a license goes into cancellation, and send it out. They wouldn't be required to respond, but we may get some responses and would give us an idea. The thing with we don't have categories for, say, retired or moving out of the country. It's just your license, when it's been when it expires, it's expired for 3 months, Dixie? And, before it goes into forfeiture?
Forfeiture is 60 days
Okay.
after its expiration date.
So it expires, and then in 60 days it goes into forfeiture status, and then in 3 years it goes into cancellation. And those are the only categories. So no matter why you expired or why your license went into cancellation, it doesn't matter. It's going to show on our system and on our website as a canceled license. And that's typical for almost every board. There's very few boards that have a breakdown of why the license canceled. So so we just don't know, and that's part of the frustration. You get, on average, how many licenses go into cancellation each year?
On average, it's about 400 per year.
So and then how many new licensees do we get?
The licenses issued, let's see. Is about just under about 330.
So and that's been consistent. The good news is we're not seeing a decrease in the number of new applications. It's just that more people are going into cancellation than are getting a first-time license, and so we can only assume that that's retirement, baby boomers, as they're exiting the practice. There's not as many people coming in behind them, and maybe that trend will change.
Is there a way to figure out, or if there's on file, age ranges of licensees?
We don't currently collect, we do have birth dates.
Do we have, because
could
right now
see if
our
we could
IT
run a
system has
report.
limitations on the reports we can run, and there's already defined reports, and so we may not be able to.
That would be a special report that we would have to request.
Yeah, we would have to get that would require a modification that really isn't happening much right now because the system isn't going to be around in a year or two. And so they're not doing updates and changes to that system. But once we get the new system, we'll be able to do these ad hoc reports and, so we can play with the not play with the numbers, but look at different things and, the average age and things like that to try to pinpoint why people are canceling.
I kind of have a comment that is interesting to me, and it might be interesting to you as you look further into this. I would think that the months after part 4 board exams, we'd have a spike in the number of people applying for licensure. So I don't see, May and June isn't on here, so boards are now and in November. So I would be interested to see if there was a spike
We do typically get a spike around June.
Yeah.
And also in January.
Yeah, and in January.
So June and January are the...
Most of our new licensees apply at about the same time.
Okay. And so we might want to see what those trends are like, because there was probably, part 4 boards were just this last weekend, and there was probably 150 people that took the test. So, we could see if those trends were going down too.
You may recall last we looked at this several meetings ago that there was a downward trend.
Yeah,
year after year.
Right.
Over when you looked at it across the nation also, so.
Yeah, so, but we have, there's not a significant right now, the numbers are pretty stable as far as the new license applicants. It's just that the number, again, of cancellations is continuing to grow. And maybe that will stabilize at some point and we'll hit a sweet spot, but for right now, more people are leaving than are coming in.
Is Patrick still here? Is that going to be something that we can easily monitor across all healthcare specialties on the new website? Wonderful.
Another thing that licensing has been working on are CE audits. We've actually increased our CE audits quite a bit for this last fiscal year. So I don't, and because our fiscal year isn't over yet, I don't have the statistics on that. But for last fiscal year, we performed 1,111 audits, and we had a 17% failure rate.
Maybe you should direct us to the audience.
Okay. So there's a 24-hour CE requirement. We did 1,111 audits for last fiscal year, and there was a 17% failure rate. And our audits are random audits. So the types of violations that we see and those that aren't in compliance are most often that people are failing to take either all or some of their mandatory course requirements, and also that they are just missing some general hours. And the third thing is that they don't really realize that the audit period is your renewal cycle. So it's not on a calendar year. So if you submit, your license expires at the end of your birth month. And so if you submit certificates that are either after your birth month or prior to your birth month from the previous year, those aren't going to count for that renewal period.
One more reminder is that when you guys are actually required to take your CE, most often what is missed is 2 hours of your mandatory hours in ethics and law. It seems like that's very important, but what we see for the failures most often is the failure to take those 2 hours. So always remember when you're doing your CE to take those 2 hours of ethics and law.
And just to, we're all going to beat up on you guys. Just to reemphasize this, this board takes continuing education very seriously, and you have to, after your first year of licensure, then you have to start taking CE. And so this board takes it very seriously, and also the legislature, the state legislature takes this seriously. When we have to go before the legislature for what they call sunset review, which is where we have to kind of justify our existence and demonstrate that we're performing our functions appropriately, they ask us, about CE audits and what the failure rate is, and so it's something that we do take seriously, and we do these audits, and it can be confusing, but the board's here as a resource. So once before you get licensed, and then once you are licensed, if you're not sure about something, call the board and ask, and we'll try to give you clarification about what you need to take and when. So that's all. You have a Dick 60? Okay, then on to enforcement, and our enforcement manager, Kristen Walker, will discuss enforcement statistics.
Sure. So just briefly, looking at the enforcement statistics table, that table now represents, we're almost to the end of the fiscal year, so that's representing 10 out of the 12 months. As you can see from the data, we're pretty consistent with the past 5 fiscal years, except for the very first 2 rows. If you look at the number of complaints received so far, we're going to be slightly higher than we have the last 2 years. That's primarily due to the increase in CE audits. Once someone fails an audit, that then becomes an enforcement case, and it's reflected in that area. And then also, if you look, the number of pending complaints currently with the board is up significantly. That's primarily due to the vacancies in the enforcement unit, and then also those cases that started as CE audits. So I do expect that number to go down pretty significantly before the end of the fiscal year as we take action on those failed CE audits. And I'm also working very closely with staff to prioritize their cases, and as Robert has mentioned, we're looking to get the new enforcement staff person in very quickly. That's all I had to note on that.
Kristen, on that page here, if
Sure.
you look at citations issued, they're equally the same in the last 3 years, yet if you look at total fines assessed, it's about half this year.
Yeah.
What's happening in that regard?
Those citations that have been issued this year, a lot of them are for more minor violations, such as failure to have, within the records, have like the height and weight of the patient or required content. And it also has to do with failed CE audits, which usually have a lower fine amount than the more severe violations. So same number of citations, but lower fines.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest factor is the CE audits, because as we've increased the number of audits that we're doing for a first-time violation, especially if it's just 1 or 2 units missed, we may issue a letter of admonishment as opposed to a citation, or a citation and a very low fine. We take a progressive approach to discipline. So because we're doing a lot more of those, and those are usually lesser fines, that's probably why you're seeing that lower number.
Are there any other questions about the table? Also within the packet, you'll see that the complaints received chart has been modified since the last board meeting. This was discussed at the enforcement committee meeting. The primary change that was made was that the table's been updated to reflect more broader categories of cases rather than trying to count the alleged violations by code. What I think this will provide is a better understanding of the types of cases that we're seeing within the unit. And I think it's going to provide us with more meaningful and reliable data that we can compare over time. Where we were focusing solely on just the violation codes, those change through the progression of a case, but the category of what we're reviewing doesn't change. So I think this is going to be more meaningful data for the board to review. And looking at it, the most common cases that we're currently seeing in the enforcement unit is, as we've been talking about, failed CE audits, unprofessional conduct, unlicensed practice, including licensees who are practicing with an expired license, arrest and conviction cases, and fraud cases. And then taking a look at the accusations that have been filed this fiscal year, there's been 19 of them filed. We've updated this chart just to sort by the most common violation to the least. What we're seeing most commonly is we're filing accusations based on convictions, insurance fraud, gross negligence or repeated acts of negligence, and sexual misconduct are the most common reasons that we're filing accusations. And then also within your packet for informational purposes are the summaries of the actions from January through April.
I'd like to just make a note for the students, in regards to arrests and convictions, be mindful that when you apply for your license, you're signing under penalty of perjury. If you've had any previous arrests or convictions, DUIs, wet recklesses, they will show up in the record, as you may have seen earlier. So it's best to just be honest and forthcoming with everything, rather than having it be explained later.
I would also say, sometimes someone had a very minor violation, a citation or something that they, like a speeding ticket, you don't have to disclose, but they had a minor violation and they were told that it's been expunged or that it wouldn't be on their record, but then when you apply for licensure, you have to submit fingerprints. And so we do a State Department of Justice and National FBI database search for convictions. And so sometimes we are informed of something that you thought wasn't going to be reported. So most likely it won't be cause for denial of a license. And so if you're in doubt, just go ahead and let us know. I got this citation. We may not have even, sometimes we don't get the notification from the FBI and DOJ, but you never know. So go ahead and disclose it, because it's something that happened in your youth, or like prior to entering chiropractic college, or even in chiropractic college, may not be grounds for denial. One DUI, generally speaking, is not grounds for denial or revocation. Two, raises some concerns, especially if they're in close proximity. So like in less than 5 years, if you've had 2 DUIs, 7 years. Sorry. That's something to consider, all of you. What you do now may have consequences for your professional future. As you saw this morning, these licenses, sometimes for the more egregious cases, do get revoked. And for discipline, the burden of proof is on the board. For reinstatement, when you're petitioning for reinstatement, the burden of proof is on you. And it's a high standard, so it's best not to get in trouble. Any of you who aren't already, I encourage you to go to the board's website and sign up for our email list. We don't send out, you're not going to get spam from us. We don't send out a lot of emails. If we send it out, it's something that we think is important for licensees to know, and it may be important for students to know. So if you're planning on being licensed in California, it's a good idea to keep up with the board's website. If there's a new law, we'll let you know. We post notifications of meetings, and you can look at the agenda and see if there's something that may be of interest to you, so you can follow up or try to attend the meeting. So I encourage everybody to engage with the board and pay attention to what's going on, because it likely will have an impact on you, especially once you're licensed. Okay, next we have an IT update, and I'm going to let Marcus present that.
The board is currently working with DCA's OIS to complete 2 projects. The first would be a short-term project that will result in licensees gaining the ability to complete annual license renewals online with a credit card. We hope that this functionality will be available by the end of the summer. And then the second project, we spoke about it a bit earlier. It's a long-term project, but it will result in an overhaul of our IT systems. We are in the third part of a 4-part procurement process, and we will be seeking bids from vendors soon. We will keep the board updated on all these changes as they come about. If you guys have any questions about the specific projects, I can respond to those now.
how are you going to notify the licensee if that is available in regards to renewal?
Perfect. So we've already engaged with DCA's communications office, and we're going to take a kind of all hands on deck, multi-pronged approach. So we've already identified that we'll utilize our website, social media. We're going to include information in the license renewal, so they'll get an insert informing them and encouraging them to, once it's available, to renew their license online. And then any other avenue, we're going to do outreach to the schools, to the association. So we're going to do our best to make sure that it's in the interest of the board and licensees to let everybody know as soon as possible about the functionality. And so we're going to do everything we can to make sure that people utilize it as much as possible.
We're very motivated to get as many people participating in online renewal as possible, because it reduces the amount of mail we get and the amount of manual cashiering that has to be done. There's a lot of workload involved in renewing a license, and that will eliminate some of that workload. And that's, as I mentioned earlier, efficiencies that we would realize through the IT system. That's one of the ones that's huge. And we have other more long-term, as far as monitoring CE. We want to automate that and have that be an online process where licensees and CE providers would be able to provide information electronically rather than having to do these audits, which are extremely time-consuming. And so then we can divert those resources elsewhere, and that hopefully it'll reduce expenditures and keep license fees low.
Thank you.
Any other questions? That's all I have. Thank you.
Is everybody okay if we skip our 15-minute break and keep going? Anybody need a break? Okay, so next is the Enforcement Committee update, which Dr. Paris was recently elected chair. So, all yours. Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you to the committee for the confidence in electing the chair. So we had an April 19th Enforcement Committee teleconference meeting, and the second thing we did there after the election was we went over the statistical information as noted, and thank you for that. I think it's helpful, and I agree. I think it's going to help us take another look at all that. And we also received an update on the Enforcement Expert Witness Program, and per the 2017 BCE Strategic Plan, the board has developed standards to evaluate expert consultants and define their responsibilities to establish consistency among expert consultant reports. And the update at the teleconference meeting was there was a sample of experts who were full board, and pursuant to recently enacted legislation AB 2138 and SB 1448, the board is required to develop regulations that conform to new statutory mandates. And AB 2138 low is licensing boards' denial of application, revocation, or suspension of licensure criminal conviction. And the recommended regulatory language to adopt, the committee is asking the board to make a motion to approve the regulatory language as proposed or with amendments to add sections 316.5 substantial relationship criteria, 327 rehabilitation criteria for suspensions or revocations, and amend section 326 to rehabilitation criteria for denials and reinstatements, and delegates authority to the executive officer to make non-substantive changes and commence the rulemaking process. And the legislative language and the recommended language is all in your packet. we're asking for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Second that motion.
Motion is that, so it can be forward to discussion.
Okay, so it came from committee with a motion and a second, so we could go back to discussion. So any discussion? Public comment? So let's take the vote.
Dr. Azzolino?
Yes.
Dr. McLean?
Yes.
Frank Rufino, yes. Dr. Dan?
Yes.
Dr. Lippman?
Yes.
Dr. Paris?
Yes. Also from the committee with a motion and a second, SB 1448, Hill probation status disclosure. The committee asked the board to make a motion to approve the regulatory language as proposed or with amendments to add section 308.1 probation status disclosure and delegates authority to the executive officer to make non-substantive changes and commence the rulemaking process.
Discussion? Public comment?
What?
Marcus?
Yeah, I'd like to draw the board's attention to one change that has since been made following the committee meeting. So if you refer to 308 probation status disclosure and you look at paragraphs or subsection C, paragraph 3.
This is behind the pink paper. It's the language
The
itself.
draft language. So paragraph C, subsection 3, there's a strike through on that line. So during the committee meeting, both Dr. Azzolino and Paris, or Dr. Azzolino identified section 3 for discussion, and staff, I want the board to discuss this, but staff thinks that if you read it, it says the light, so the board's aware of this language, but what this piece of legislation required is that for a DC that's on probation, the DC will be required to notify patients. And so this particular section provides exemptions from that notification requirement. And so this particular paragraph 3 says that a licensee would not be required to disclose this information to when they will be treating a patient during a visit that is not known immediately prior to the visit. So the concern that was expressed by the committee was that there are many licensees that their practice setting, they're in a practice setting such that there are many patients that just walk in and you don't know your patient prior to commencing treatment. And so this exemption could potentially pose a harm to consumers, where this licensee that's on probation and accepts walk-in patients would not be required by the law to inform their patients that they're on probation. And so staff discussed this, and we thought that following the concern that was expressed by the committee, that this would be a section that we think wouldn't be something that would be in the best interest of patients. And so I'd like to the board to look at it, and if there are any concerns or discussion, we can discuss it, and then if you agree with that concern that was expressed by the committee, then we can leave it as is.
Any questions, concerns?
Just so I'm clear, the strikeout language, is that considered a technical, non-substantive change?
Yes.
So in terms of the change to the proposed language that's been presented, what I'm concerned about is whether there needs to be another motion if there's a substantive change.
I mean, it would have been presented prior to the discussion, so, I mean, this is already done before.
This is something that the committee agreed on.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
We discussed this in committee. Any questions on that? Public comment, let's call for the vote.
Dr. Azzolino?
Valerie?
There
Yeah.
wasn't a motion.
I'm sorry?
There wasn't a motion.
Motion came from committee.
Yeah, okay.
For the strike through,
Thank
to
you.
keep it strict.
We did that in committee.
Thank you.
So we're voting to keep it as written here?
Yes, you're
Yes.
voting to adopt this language before you with that strikeout.
Rufino?
Okay, we all clear?
Yep.
Dr. Azzolino?
Yes.
Dr. McLean?
Yes.
Frank Rufino, yes. Dr. Dan?
Yes.
Dr. Lippman?
Yes.
Dr. Paris?
Yes.
Motion carried.
I just want to speak to the audience again. This is something that the legislature passed last year, and something that you'll want to be aware of. If you're disciplined by the board after your license and you're placed on probation, every patient will have to be notified that you're on probation. You'll have to provide them in writing and verbally with information about what you were disciplined for. And so that's likely to have an impact on your practice, and just another thing to be aware of. It's because there's a lot of opportunity to make mistakes or make a bad decision, and so just be aware that the consequences, and this is by law, the state legislature thinks that this is something that patients have a right to know. If they're healthcare professionals, not just chiropractors, it's all healthcare professionals, but if their healthcare professional has been disciplined, and they should have that information provided to them so they can make an informed decision about who they see for healthcare.
The board is not here to be punitive to you. We're here to protect the public. And it's, there's too many good things that you can do as chiropractors out there to get yourself caught up in foolish things and try to back yourself out of it. So just stay true to how you're taught and you'll be fine. Anything further?
That's it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Paris. And next, we're going to move over to the Government Affairs and Public Affairs Committee update. I'm sorry, licensing and continuing education.
All right, so the Licensing and Continuing Education Committee met on April 16th, and we met and discussed Strategic Goal Plan 1, which entails discussion of completion dates and on those items that are ongoing or in progress. We were given technology updates, which Mr. Pulio has extended to you as well, right here. The main area being the acceptance of online renewals, which is soon to come. And again, Mr. Pulio discussed the stage that we're in with getting the new system, which will be paramount in keeping us abreast, keeping us in the 21st century and able to work more efficiently and effectively. The strategic plan also addressed developing and implementing an auditing process for continuing ed courses that address some of the issues that we currently have. Basically, what we want is a mandatory evaluation tool that will help us and assist us in being more efficient for students as well as licensees. We discussed potentially developing an ethics and law continuing ed course based on the top 10 violations. Again, just to educate the public, educate the doctors, the new doctors especially, on how to stay out of trouble basically and what those violations are and how to avoid the pitfalls, as Dr. Azzolino stated. We think that it will be invaluable and have a positive impact and effect on the number of infractions we see, particularly the less egregious ones. As we discussed the ongoing proposed amendments to the continuing ed regulation. The idea was brought up that we would consider utilizing the CCE's accreditation standards and meta competencies as a roadmap and a tool to build upon in our continuing ed regs. This way, each course has a clear objective and outcome established, which will ultimately help with the continuing ed providers in submitting applications, as well as assist board staff in reviewing courses. Staff will further research and present additional materials to the committee on this, and we'll bring it forth to the board, to the full board for review after that. We also discussed the denial and appeal process for providers and proposed changes to the provider application and restrictions faced there until the new regs are established. So we're still discussing the potential definition of course, which will impact that and how we want to define how we separate that. And I believe that was it. We discussed the provider qualifications and the responsibility to be able to deliver defensible continuing ed, which will ultimately protect everyone. And that was it. Thank you.
I'd like to emphasize something that Dr. McLean said, not so much for this audience, but for the greater audience out there monitoring us online. The committee discussed these things. They haven't been adopted. No decisions have been made. It hasn't been presented to the full board to vote on. So these are discussions. So if you hear something in Dr. McLean's report that you disagree with or have a problem with, that you're welcome to let us know your concerns and why. You can participate in upcoming continuing education committee meetings so that your voice can be heard. But oftentimes when we give these updates at meetings, we start to get a lot of angry mail and emails about people assume that these are things that the board has already done or laws that have already been enacted. That's not the case. We're discussing these, and we welcome participation from interested parties.
And I think that that's why it's so important for people to attend the committee meetings, not just the general board meeting, so that you can get a better understanding of that very thing and be a part of the discussion. Because if you're not a part of the discussion there, then you really don't have room to complain.
And for this audience, it's important to understand that as a state regulatory agency, we abide by the Open Meeting Act, meaning everything's done in the open, in a meeting here where you can all hear what's happening and voice your opinions. So we act with the highest level of transparency, so nothing happens behind the scenes. There's no decisions that are made without your ability to weigh in. So if you participate, you'll be able to render an opinion rather than scream later.
Again, join our mailing list so you have an opportunity to participate.
And any complaints, call Robert.
Yes.
Thank
you. Give them your number then.
Next item is the Government Affairs and Public Affairs Committee meeting.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm going to find my page.
Anybody? Chair,
sorry, I was there a minute ago. Let's see. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so the Government Affairs Committee met on March 26th to review and discuss the strategic plan goals from the board's last strategic plan. The committee reviewed proposed revisions to the board member administrative procedure manual and held a discussion on the development of a social media content bank. Additionally, the committee received an update on some bills introduced during the current legislative session, which we'll be discussing current legislation in a few minutes. So the committee determined that strategic plan action item 3.2.1 continue to schedule annual meet and greets with legislative offices and provide relevant information in an ongoing item because these meetings will be scheduled on an as-needed basis. The committee also received an update on strategic plan action item 3.3.1, establish a calendar of events sponsored by applicable entities. The events calendar has been created and is continually populated with information regarding future events. So annually, usually for the board member administrative procedure manual, annually the board completes a comprehensive review of the manual and which was created a few years back to serve as a reference guide regarding functions of the board. So oftentimes there's things that don't occur very often. The board, if it has to take action or make a decision, there's confusion about how should this be handled, and so those type of things are addressed in the Administrative Procedure Manual. Let's see, at the December 11th meeting, the committee reviewed the manual and proposed additional changes to the section on vice chair duties regarding the executive officer's annual evaluation. So it just shifted some duties from the chair to the vice chair to even out the workload. For the social media content bank, the committee discussed the possibility of developing a social media content bank to share information of interest to consumers, licensees, and stakeholders. The committee is interested in exploring this topic further. And so we want, and that's another, in addition to our email list, we do have social media accounts, Facebook and Twitter, and you can go to those. We're trying to make the information on there more frequent and relevant, and so these are things that the Government Affairs Committee discusses, is information that we want to share with licensees and the public about board activities, and just basically information that would be beneficial for licensees and or the public.
So the reason why that's important is that Natalie is our social media person, and she's tasked with maintaining that for the board, and she does the best that she can to create content, relevant content that could be either informative or interesting to licensees and the public. However, she's limited in her scope and understanding of like the specific things relevant to chiropractors. And so the reason why we discuss this as a committee and why the social media bank is important is that we want to enlist specifically the whole board, but I think that it's more relevant for the licensee members to help contribute to that. And so what we hope to do is that in your daily travels and in the course of doing your job, if there are things that are interesting to you that you come across, whether it's National Chiropractic Month or Spinal Health Month or things like that, or just interesting, maybe it's a meme or something that you think would be relevant to disseminate to our social media followers, can you just send that to one of us? We want to develop a bank so that we can engage our followers and increase our reach on social media. And the best way that we believe to do that is to develop a social media bank with, say, 60 to 80 relevant posts that she can, schedule out so that we're doing regular interventions and posting, because that's one of the best ways and best practices as far as how to develop a following online, is to regularly post consistently. And so we would ideally say post 3 times a week and schedule those out for, say 4 months. And so the best way we can do that is by hopefully tapping into your big brains and having you guys come up with some really interesting things that will be helpful to us, so Natalie can post it on social media. So it doesn't have to be done now, but we want to re-engage that conversation and hope that you guys can send us and provide us with some content so that we can start banking those things so we can post regularly on our social media.
Thank you, Robert.
And then as far as legislation that the committee discussed, the committee discussed AB 613 by Assemblymember Lowe, which deals with fees. And what this bill would do is adjust fees for all regulatory boards, not just ours, every 4 years by an amount no greater than the increase in the California Consumer Price Index for the preceding 4 years. And there's more specific provisions in there, but this wouldn't, it sounds like it would increase revenue for the board, but that's not what it would do. What it would do is ensure that the board, without having to go through the whole legislative process, which is time and resource consuming, it would enable us to keep up with inflation. So, and only if our fund is, at below a certain amount of revenue or a certain amount of dollars in reserve. So if we fall below a certain reserve And there's, the consumer price index has continued to increase. We would be able to adjust our fees accordingly. And so it would just be a much more efficient way of keeping up with inflation. And, if this bill would specifically prohibit boards from expanding, so if we needed more revenue because we wanted to create a new program or increase the number of staff, that we would have to go through the formal budget change proposal process. But this is just for your, inflation, cost of living type increases and increases in pro rata to the department and statewide, increases in staff benefits and salaries, that sort of thing. So it would allow us to keep up without having to continuously go back to the legislature. So the committee voted to take a support position on this bill. And should we vote on that here or wait?
It's the next item.
I'm sorry?
It's the next item on the agenda.
Yeah, so, okay, I just, since and then the other, there's additional legislation that, has come about since this committee, but the other bill that the committee discussed, was AB 888, which deals with opioid prescriptions, and, this bill was sponsored by the California Chiropractic Association, or CalChiro. AB 888 extends the requirement for a prescriber, which would be a medical doctor or a doctor of osteopathic medicine, as well as nurse practitioners and physician assistants. It extends the requirements for them in treating a patient to discuss the risks associated with opioids and the availability of certain non-pharmacological treatments before issuing the first opioid prescription. The bill also requires prescribers to obtain written informed consent and to offer a referral to a provider of non-pharmacological.
Line perfectly.
So I move that the board takes a support position on AB 613 and AB 888.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Public comment? Let's call for the vote.
Dr. Azzolino?
Yes.
Dr. McLean?
Yes.
Frank Ruffino, yes. Dr. Dan?
Yes.
Dr. Lichtman?
Yes.
Dr. Paris?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Can we go through the other legislation at this time? Robert, are you finished with your report?
Yes, so that's the next agenda item.
Okay.
I have questions about the current agenda item.
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So, do we need a motion to accept the changes to the board member administrative procedure manual?
It's in there.
I know there are going to be an opportunity for discussion.
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah, I'm sorry. So it's under that same tab, 15, I believe. Just after the memo, there's the administrative procedure manual with the changes, and they were highlighted. With the photocopy, the highlighting isn't very clear, but you can see the changes where something was either added or deleted.
And the bulk of the substantive changes are on page 8 and page 9 of the Administrative Procedure Manual, if you want to refer to it. And if you have any specific questions regarding some of the changes, we can discuss those at this time.
So point of information, again, because the committee moves, do we need a motion? If we do, so moved.
Well, that's where we'll have a discussion.
First you need to have a motion to discuss it. Right?
Any discussion?
I just have a couple questions. Just informational wise, you guys changed the name of the committee to get rid of the strategic plan in the, is there, because you guys still are ahead of the, it's on page, I'm sorry, 19. Government and Public Affairs Committee and strategic planning committee was removed. Yet, I think under the responsibilities, you're still dealing with the strategic plan. I mean, I'm not against it, I just wanted to know why you decided to do it. Too much of a mouthful for the name of the committee, or?
Page number 19.
I think it was too much. I think it was, yeah, page 19 and 32, and the title.
Or was that a previous change?
I thought that was a previous change because we have a formal strategic plan that we're all involved with.
Okay. And then this has nothing to do with the changes, but can I ask a question about it anyway, because it has to do with the document? On page 9, under committee chair responsibilities. So I would like to add onto there that the committee chair schedules meetings. I mean, there's no clear identifier of who schedules meetings, and I'd like to have discussion about that, whether it's the committee chair, whether anybody on the committee can schedule a meeting, or if it doesn't matter to the board, that's fine too. But since we're outlining responsibilities.
Wouldn't it be better for staff to be the one in charge of scheduling the meeting?
Staff, you want staff to schedule
recommendations,
meetings? I'm fine with that.
Has there been an issue with that?
Sometimes coordinating schedules can be complicated, so it's a collaborative process. I mean, staff can coordinate that, but sometimes there's conflicts in committee member schedules, and then staff can only do so much. If the committee can't agree on a date, then there's no...
And that wasn't even really my question. My question was, how do we initiate the scheduling of meetings? Is it staff that's going to come to the committee, or is it the committee that's going to come to the staff? That was my question, not about conflicts of dates or anything like that, but how do we make sure that we have committee meetings on a regular basis? Should it be the staff that comes to the committee, or the committee that goes to the staff, or the committee chair that goes to the staff, or how is that supposed to work?
I would say any and all, but...
Any and all is fine.
I mean, I think it's going to be substantively related.
Okay.
Do you guys have an opinion on that?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, certainly if staff is aware of something that needs to be addressed by a specific committee, we can reach out to the committee chair or committee members. And likewise, if staff isn't aware of anything and somebody on the committee wants to meet to discuss a specific item, they can contact staff and say, I'd like to schedule a meeting. And staff can do the actual polling of members and so on to schedule the date. But unless the board wants to have the responsibility with one individual or entity.
I think it's better that we leave it open.
Leave it open? I'm okay with that. Okay.
Legally, the calling of a committee meeting inherently falls within the discretion of the chair. So
Of the board or the committee?
Of the committee. So it need not be specified in the procedure manual.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to wait in for a quick second. I think any and all works, but the person that takes the leadership in terms of initiating, I think, should be the chair. So the committee chair should initiate the requests for the meeting, and then staff will facilitate, the logistics of dates and so on and so forth. But I think it's appropriate, and I share Dr. Dan's concern, I think it's appropriate to place that initial responsibility with the committee chair.
So,
and I'm fine putting that in there, but there's been,
Yeah.
many times where staff has known that, for instance, in the enforcement committee, they know that something needs some attention, and they prompt us, so, I mean, if...
And they communicate with the committee chair.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Swenson, how should we proceed on this? You got an opinion?
Yeah, in that case, it goes to tell the committee chair.
It's fundamentally a policy issue, but what I wanted to make clear was that the ability to call a committee meeting is inherently within the discretion of the committee chair. So it need not be specified, but the absence of a specification doesn't deprive the chair of the ability to do that. But for policy reasons, if the full board wants to specify that that's the responsibility of the committee chair, then there's no reason that the board cannot do that.
I don't see a need, but if you
I
guys
don't
want
see
to.
a need, or I think that either the staff or the chair, like you said, in instances where it's appropriate, the staff may need to come to the chair and initiate the process as well. I just think that that should not be something that's eliminated.
Definitely. One question I have for the full board is some committees have ongoing, like the Continuing Education Committee right now is focused on amendments to the Continuing Education regulations. But for new topics, is that something that the board wants to refer to committees, or do you want committees to be able to determine that they want to discuss an issue to present to the board? Should committees be working on something that the board hasn't directed them to work on?
I am okay with any and all. Once again, I'm trusting that all members on the board, have the appropriate insight to determine what needs to move forward, considering that nothing's going to pass without a full board vote. So I mean, I think it's a matter of efficiency to allow the committees to pick up something if they need to, and then bring it forward to the board, or vice versa.
Okay, I just wanted to see.
Unless you guys have an opinion, different.
I don't have any more discussion.
Okay, any further discussion?
Well, just to be clear, so Mr. Rapino had a general idea about the chair, and so is there consensus among the board now that that's not the direction? We want to leave it as is?
Do you want to make a motion? We take a vote on it, or are you comfortable?
Well, only if you want to make a change.
The council just said that it defaults automatically, so I think it's understood, it's implied, unless you think it's necessary.
I don't think we need to put it in writing.
So do we need to take a vote on the administrative procedure manual?
Yes,
Anyone call for
the
the vote?
changes that are currently identified in here, so if there's no further changes, then you could vote on it as is.
Motion to approve board member administration procedure manual.
It's already coming from committee, so we'll have a first and a second, but it's from committee, so let's call for the vote.
Okay, Dr. Azzolino?
Yes.
Dr. McLean?
Yes.
Public comment, I'm sorry. Call for the vote.
Okay, we'll start again. Dr. Azzolino?
Yes.
Dr. McLean?
Yes.
Frank Ruffino, yes. Dr. Dan?
Yes.
Dr. Lickman?
Yes.
Dr. Paris?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. So Marcus or Robert, do you want to give us an update on the additional legislation, please?
Yes, so, AB 544, this is tab, in your, tab 16. So the board's going to be asked to discuss and take a position on certain legislation, and I'll go through those. So the first one is AB 544, and this one would have limited the, currently most boards charge the same fee for an inactive license as an active license. This bill would have restricted us from charging any more than 50% of the active license for an inactive license, which we, the staff had concerns with, but this bill has since died. It's not moving forward, and our staff contacted the author's office, and sometimes these are made into 2-year bills. This one, they don't intend to pursue this, so this topic doesn't need to be addressed. The next one is AB 613, which you've already voted
Sorry,
on.
Robert, before you continue, so is that in suspense file? Was that put in suspense?
It was on suspense, but last Friday was the deadline for bills to pass out of the fiscal committee, and it didn't make it out. So it essentially died there unless a rule waiver was granted, but they didn't request a waiver, and they don't intend to pursue this either, so it's.
So in
it's
the
gone.
immune point, you're recommending for the board not to take a position? Because I think this is a.
Yeah, there's no need to take a position, yeah. So if they reintroduce this bill next year, then we would likely want to vote to take a position. But right now, as I mentioned, sometimes they'll, for bills that are controversial, they'll make them 2-year bills so they have an opportunity to work with interested parties to address the concerns. That doesn't appear to be the case with this one. So AB 613 by Assemblymember Lowe was the regulatory fees and the consumer price index that the board already voted on. AB 888 is the opioid prescription bill, and you voted on that. So SB 53 is Senator Wilk, and that's open meetings, and what that would do is currently the Open Meeting Act requires a committee that consists of 3 or more members of a board if they're going to meet, that it has to be noticed. This would reduce that number to 2. So essentially, if any 2 board members met or discussed an item, it would have to be noticed pursuant to the Open Meeting Act. We would have to post the agenda 10 days prior and allow public participation. So staff has recommended it. And I'm sorry, I should have mentioned there are analyses for all of these in here. Staff has recommended a neutral position on this bill. So this one you haven't voted on yet, so I don't know if the board wants to discuss this.
Doesn't that greatly slow down anything that we could do? Should there be a new hot topic or something of the sort?
Well, earlier in the year, we changed the composition of our committees, and so all the committees, except for government affairs at this time, are 3-member committees or more. So it's a moot point for us.
If there's a topic, if there's something that comes up, we need to decide whether to bring forward to a committee.
One of the concerns that some boards have raised is that there's certain matters where, like if the executive officer leaves and the board needs to recruit a new executive officer, sometimes they'll establish a recruitment committee, which would be 2 members, and so this would require that to be noticed, which could create some complications for that process. The substance of those meetings would be, I assume, and I'll have to ask you, that would be closed session since it's a personnel matter. So most of that would take place in closed session, but the board would have to notify the public that this is being discussed by these 2 members, and so that's the concern. And then this is sorry. We've recommended neutral because it really is a policy decision. It depends on how concerned the board is with this. One thing to consider is that if this is moving through the legislature, if this is the will of the legislature and the governor signs this bill, then those powers have decided that board activities should always be discussed in a public setting, and there shouldn't be an exemption for 2 members. So but that's something for this board to decide whether that would be problematic, and they would want to take an opposition position on this bill.
If unlike current law, this bill, if enacted, would require a noticed meeting for any time 2 members sit down to discuss board business.
And I'm assuming even a phone call, correct? Yeah. So if one board member called another board member to discuss a policy issue, that would be considered a meeting for purposes of the Open Meeting Act, and so that the call would be prohibited unless there was a notice.
Do we have to take a position on this?
We don't have to. No, we could watch it.
It just seems to me that this would greatly increase our inefficiency and cost, but should the legislature wish for this to pass, it's going to pass no matter what.
Mr. Rufino?
Well, I think we should take a position that at minimum, we should watch it. This bill, just for everybody's, some of you may recall, this bill is identical to AB 85 from 2015. It's nearly identical to AB 2058 from 2014. Both of those bills, same author, incidentally, were vetoed by then Governor Brown. So, and the Governor Brown, said in his veto message on both of these previous bills, made it pretty clear that these are advisory committees, do not have the authority to act on their own. They must present any findings or recommendation to the overall body, which to the overall board, before formal action can be taken. And the state body must conduct its meeting in an open public forum and allow for public input before any action can be taken. So I do not necessarily advocate today to oppose, but I certainly would watch it. But in the end, if we should take a position, because I think it will slow the progress and the work. And I would lean, just as the previous governor vetoed this bill, I would lean to oppose the bill for the reasons that have already been described.
So I don't disagree. I just, because it will, I mean, from the staff perspective, this will complicate things a little, but I don't see it having a tremendous impact on workload. So it's really a matter for the board to decide. That's why we didn't recommend a support or opposition. So I don't disagree with what you're saying.
Was that a motion to oppose?
I would suggest to make a motion to watch for the time being, because we don't know what ultimately, how far it's going to go. So I would. Yes.
Okay, we have a motion to watch. That's been seconded. Any discussion?
I just want to add one thing, that this is a huge change, because it would impact more than our little board. It would impact every DCA board, every other board or commission or entity in the executive branch. So this would have far-reaching impact, and it's really most likely, since it has made it through the legislature in previous attempts, it will make it through again, and it's going to be Governor Newsom's decision whether he thinks this is a good or a bad idea.
So, do you see any harm to us in opposing this?
No.
May I ask, since we still have Patrick here, is DCA taking a position on this one?
We do not take position on legislation this early in the process. We refer to boards for the
Yeah.
So can we make another motion while one motion is on the floor?
You can make a substitute motion.
I'd like to substitute a motion to oppose.
Second.
I accept the motion.
So we have to withdraw the first motion?
Yeah, so it's a substitute motion now takes place.
Okay. So any discussion? Public comment? So let's call for the vote. We have a motion to oppose Senate Bill 53.
Dr. Azzolino?
Yes.
Dr. McLean?
Yes.
Frank Rufino, yes. Dr. Dan?
Yes.
Dr. Lichtman?
Yes.
Dr. Parrish?
Yes.
Motion carries.
For the record, Ken, does Mr. Rufino need to withdraw his first motion officially? Because I just want to, for the minutes, would we say that he withdrew his motion?
Yes, and he consented to the substitution motion.
Yeah, I don't necessarily need to withdraw as long as I accept the substitute motion, then takes precedent over the motion.
I want to know how we record it.
So consent or accept the substitution. Consent to or accept.
That's right. Okay, so that was SB 53. SB 425 by Senator Hill. That is tab E for the board members. So this bill would require every health facility, clinic, or other entity with any arrangement authorizing a licensed healthcare professional to provide care for patients to report that, a health facility that provides care to patients would have to report allegations of sexual abuse and sexual misconduct by a licensed healthcare practitioner to the appropriate licensing board within 15 days and imposes a fine for failure to report. This is an expansion of existing law, which requires, it's usually like disciplinary review committees of hospitals that make a decision. They need to report to the medical board the decision. This would extend that to any health facility, which would include any of your offices. So if you employ other health practitioners, other chiropractors, or any other health practitioner, and there's an allegation or determination of sexual misconduct, you would have to report it to the appropriate board.
I'll make a motion to support.
Second.
Discussion? Public comment? Call for the vote, please.
Dr. Azzolino?
Yes.
Dr. McLean?
Yes.
Frank Ruffino, yes. Dr. Dan?
Yes.
Dr. Lichtman?
Yes.
Dr. Paris?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay.
That was all for that.
Everybody good? Can we push forward? So we have an update on discussion possible action regarding the Federal Sports Medical Licensure Clarity Act.
Our soon-to-be new legal counsel, Michael Knotes, will provide the update.
Mr. Chair, members, it's a pleasure to address the board today. Very briefly, the Sports Medicine Licensure Clarity Act of 2008 was enacted into federal law in October. It does has two main purposes. One is to require that professional liability insurance coverage in the practitioner, the healthcare practitioner's home state be extended when he or she is traveling to treat or traveling with a sports professional or team in a secondary state. All these terms are defined by the Act, and it would extend that coverage as if the practitioner was in his or her home state. The second and a more direct importance to the board is that it would treat the professional as if he or she.
So a licensee from New Mexico, which has limited prescriptive and surgical authority, wouldn't be allowed to do those here because that's not in the scope of practice of chiropractic.
And this does supersede the Chiropractic Initiative Act?
Yes, it does.
Okay, great.
Just for clarity again, my understanding is that they have to comply with the scope of practice that's smaller. So basically, same holds true if someone from California goes to New Mexico, you can't prescribe because it's not in our scope. So they have to abide by the scope of practice that's smaller.
That's another way of stating that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so next
Update, discussion, possible action.
yes, and
Hello.
we have Andrea McMillan, who's our policy analyst. She's here to present the update.
So now that the rulemaking process has been approved to develop the package.
I'm sorry, Andrea, can you speak a little
I
more?
hope it's a little bit better now. Okay. Now that the rulemaking process has been approved to develop the package regarding the denial of applications, revocation, or suspension of licensure, we anticipate sending out a public notice to meet the expedited review process proposed by DCA. So what it means is we would have to have this regulation in place by July 1st of 2020. Additionally, the draft language has been also approved regarding the package for the probation disclosure status. And because the language has now been approved, staff will be working on developing this package. Last but not least, staff has been working on changes proposed by our legal counsel regarding the package about the delegation of authority to the AEO and the CPI package. Once these changes are completed, we will be resubmitting these packages to our legal counsel for a second level review. And that's, so currently, our CE regulation, the CE committee has been working on it, has been working through policy issues, and right now they had the meeting recently. So these issues are still at hand, and one of the updates at the meeting was that they wanted to move into a different direction that was more related to mega competency requirements, as Dr. McLean stated earlier. So right now the committee is just currently working through those policy issues, and staff is actively working on this package as well.
In other words, the CE regs are very much still in the discussion phase.
All right, thank you.
That's all for the regulatory updates, unless we have the table with all of the regulation changes that have been proposed or discussed by the board, and so if anybody has any questions or comments about any of those, they can raise them now.
Should we have any public comment for items not on the agenda? Public comment? Going once?
You can come on up to the table if you want to make a comment.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Simmerit. I'm with Triad Seminars, CE provider, and I didn't hear that much stuff going on today, so I don't want to take your time and bore you with my whole thing, but I did submit a letter, a 6-page letter for the CE committee and the board members to take a look at. I've been part of the CE regulatory change process over the last 30 years with this board, so it's not my first rodeo of going through proposed regulatory changes. My letter that I did write was based on the OAL guidelines that have clarity, consistency, and necessity as part of the process to make a regulatory change. And so all my commentary in my letter is with the basis of those three things for the board to consider and look at on regulatory changes. So I just want to thank everybody for being part, to allow me to be part of a process. I've been teaching seminars, I can't even believe I'm saying this, but almost 25 years every week. So I do have some input that I hope the board feels valuable, and I'm not here to critique anything. So you guys are doing a fantastic job listening to some of the stuff you're dealing with, and I want to applaud you for your hard work and dedication. And that's it. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you, Dr. Simmer. And Dr. Simmer's letter will be provided to the Continuing Education Committee to review and discuss. So then his information will ultimately be available to the board.
Any other public comment? Anybody else? Once? Twice? Okay, and we'll move on to future items and future agenda items. I think we'll deal with that as we go along. So, anybody else have any additional items for today?
Okay. If any of the board members, a light bulb goes on your drive home, you can send me an email and I can present that to the chair and secretary for consideration for future agenda.
Don, future agenda items, public comment? Put on the spot.
Don, you were just put on the spot.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have any future agenda items or comments for the board?
Did I miss the sports physicals? Was it that fast?
Yes.
I'll catch up with you later. No, future.
Okay, so we are going to adjourn at 3:31. Thank you, everybody.